What drives you to go from owning and operating businesses to wanting to all of a sudden jump into a political position? You know, the first thing that you told me when you walked in here, he's like, no, I'm not a politician.
No,
And
definitely not that.
yeah, you know, and if it's just a completely different world, right? Going from business, being an entrepreneur, to going into the political landscape. So, you know, for you, is that kind of what drove you, is to have a higher purpose to help people, help Texas?
What God's done for me in keeping things together for us after my wife's accident has been tremendous. And I made some commitments and asking for him to help me do that was one of the big factors of me throwing my hat in this ring. And then secondly, you know, as the shale, you guys are familiar with what happened with the shale. We discovered the shale, and if y'all remember back in the 80s, we didn't think we had any gas or oil. That's what brought us to trading with foreign countries to buy oil, and that's what brought us to tooling our refineries mostly on heavier crude like you get from foreign countries today. You know, with the discovery of the shale, that completely changed the dynamics in this deal. So naturally, my company's revenue trailed behind, you know, what was hot and what was going, which was the oil field. And we got more involved in dealing with them, in handling permits with the Railroad Commission or violations with the Railroad Commission, and have got a pretty good customer base in that side from the environmental aspect. And it was in that I saw at the Railroad Commission that they have got some staff that not necessarily understands the oil and gas industry and the economics of how that works for Texas and how important that economics is for Texas. And that, you know, a lot of those don't bring the experience. They set them down and they say, okay, we need you to do X job, and here's the rules that are around this X job. And I don't know if you guys have ever read governmental rules, but there are a lot of interpretation in there. They're like reading the Bible. So if you give an inexperienced person that rule and ask them to make an interpretation, you're going to start having delays. You're going to have which essentially impact what our economic growth is, which was what was happening to my customer base. So I actually had some of our customers and a couple other people that said, hey, we'll volunteer our time if we can get the Railroad Commission to accept us to come in and help write guidance documents for, you know, staff members to kind of follow, so we get a better level playing field, you know, in timeliness and making sure that our economy is moving along and that it's not held up waiting on decisions by the Railroad Commission because somebody is inexperienced. And I went up, I talked to one of the commissioners, and they said, yeah, that we think that's a great idea. We'll give you access to staff. Well, lo and behold, to us, we didn't meet one staff member that really wanted to work with an outside task force to write guidance documents. They were adamantly against that. So the task force that I formed looked at me, since I was the guy that formed it, and said, Jim, we really, really would want to make these changes, and would you consider running for Railroad Commissioner? That was in July of 2019. It was actually December 6th. I'll never forget that day, because December 7th is my wife and I's anniversary, and she loves to play slot machines. So we hopped in a private plane, and we left Sinton, Texas, which is near where our ranch is, and we're flying. And I looked at her and I said, do you mind if I stop in Austin? She said, for what? I said, well, I want to register for Railroad Commissioner. And she looked at me and said, you are a nut. And, so I did, and you know, it was amazing going through the primary, but I think, you know, me beating the incumbent Ryan Sinton, you know, I think Ryan Sinton's a great guy, but I think it goes to show that people in Texas are wanting more surety in what that industry brings, and they need a change. And I think that you know, I've heard a couple people say this, but I'll say it again. I think people are starting to recognize that we need to keep less government out of our business and more business in our government. And I think that, you know, our president today has tried to prove that point of just using common sense of how we do things in our future, like you would do running a business.